Henry Sanford owned a large swath of undeveloped Central Florida land in the late 1800s. Wanting to sell some of this land, he allowed the railroad to build a line through his property and appointed a Catholic priest to oversee the station and encourage growth. In 1886, 4 Dutch families moved to the area and it became St. Joseph's Colony. The following year, yellow fever struck and one family lost 4 members to the sickness. For fear of the fever spreading, the bodies were buried in the woods north of the railroad tracks and away from the settlement. Their priest was called away to tend to yellow fever victims in Tampa, and a few days later also succumbed to the illness and never made it back to St. Joseph's Colony. No one ever performed the last rites for the deceased family members. We don't even know their names. In 1905, Albert S. Hawkins purchased the land north of the railroad tracks and prepared the land for farming. Hawkins discovered the graves, and when he learned of their origin, put a fence around the area and changed his planting pattern to avoid that spot. That wasn't enough to keep strange things from happening in his home, however. Hawkins and his wife told stories about a chair that rocked by itself and their children's toys being played with when no one was around. Over the years, the land was leased to other farmers who were warned about the graves and not to disturb them. Despite the warnings, some people couldn't help themselves. One man tried to replace the fencing, and later that night, his house burned down. A young boy dug into one of the graves and was soon after struck and killed by a car. Even Hawkins himself had his house burned down after he removed the rotted grave markers. His wife insisted he replace them before any more bad luck happened. In 1959, the Hopkins property was bought to build Interstate 4. While prepping for construction, the graves were marked and scheduled to be moved, but that never happened, and these 4 unnamed bodies, who were never laid to rest properly, had truckfuls of dirt dumped unceremoniously upon their graves. At the same time, Hurricane Donna made landfall in Miami and was expected to cut across the state toward the Gulf, but she made a strange turn and headed straight for that spot, once known as St. Joseph's Colony, and the eye of the storm passed over the gravesite at midnight that night. Cleanup from the powerful storm halted construction on the interstate for more than a month. The day the interstate was open for traffic, a semi-truck jackknifed at that same spot, an eastbound lane just before the end of the St. Johns River Bridge, which was only the beginning of the carnage that strip of road has seen. It is not the deadliest section of Interstate 4, but there are a number of crashes that happen there every year. Drivers also claim to see apparitions and balls of light, or hear voices through their radios and CBs. Cell phone service in the area is not steady, and batteries have been drained while driving this stretch of road. If you are traveling on I-4, please be safe and do not play ghost hunter in this area. There are plenty enough dangers for those driving on the highway. If you know any more stories about the I-4 dead spot, leave a comment below.